Northeast Corridor, New York. Yeah, this thing. Many people in the forums and social media have begged Dovetail Games to bring this route over to Train Sim World 2. I haven't played this route at all ever since the release of Train Sim World 2 back in August of 2020, so I decided to reinstall Train Sim World 2020 to see if the route really was as good as people were making it out to be. And what do I have to say? This route is utter shit. I do not understand why so many people want this route to come to Train Sim World 2 so badly. And this is coming from someone who loves American trains. This route has many flaws. If you're one of those people begging for this route to come back but don't want to think about what's actually wrong with the route, then just click off the video, please. But before I completely annihilate this route and probably lose half of my fan base, let's briefly talk about the history of this route. Northeast Corridor, New York released for Train Sim World on PC on March 20th, 2018. It was then released for consoles 4 months later on July 24th. This is Dovetail Games' 4th route they've made for Train Sim World. The route travels between Newark International Airport and New Rochelle. What the fuck? And travels for approximately 32 miles. The route also includes a branch line to Fresh Pond Junction, along with a few other yards on the route exclusive to CSX trains. The locomotive fleet on this route are the Siemens ACS-64, CSX GP38-2, and the CSX GP40-2 if you own the DLC on Sandpatch Grade. An additional DLC was added to this route on June 20th, 2019. This pack included the EMD SW1000R and an ex-Metroliner cab car for Keystone services. Overall, this route wasn't too well received, having a 3.8 star rating on Xbox and mixed reviews on Steam. With the release of Train Sim World 2 in August of 2020, Dovetail Games stated that Northeast Corridor, New York would not be added to the preserved collection, causing a major outrage in the community. Dovetail Games' reasoning behind this was due to them using experimental code on the route in hope of better performance. However, this failed miserably. They stated it would take more time to try to move the route to Train Sim World 2 than to rebuild the route from scratch. But knowing the TSW community, they still believed it would be an easy port over to Train Sim World 2. In April of 2021, Dovetail Games announced Train Sim World 2 Rush Hour. One of the routes included in this pack was Northeast Corridor, Boston to Providence. I was over the moon with this announcement. Once I began to research this route, I knew this was going to be way better than Northeast Corridor, New York. On its initial release, I fell in love with this route. Although the route has problems of its own, they are not as daunting as Northeast Corridor, New York's many problems. Even though Boston Sprinter is better than Northeast Corridor, New York in almost every single way, people still want NEC New York to make a return. So here we are. Northeast Corridor, New York has many issues that really hurt this route. The first and most obvious reason is the route choice. I definitely see what Dovetail Games was trying to go for here, but I don't think having a major passenger terminal in the middle of the route works at all. This route also feels very short. I was doing a run towards Newark Liberty, and once I got there, I went, wait, that's it? It took me 52 minutes as well, but it only felt like 20. I think the other reason for choosing this route was so that Dovetail Games could include Hellgate Bridge and CSX trains on this route. I don't blame them for wanting to include Hellgate Bridge, but CSX really doesn't add much to this route. All you ever really do with freight on this route are run trains between Oak Point Yard and Harlem River Terminal, which is only a mile long, do some switching services, which really aren't my thing, and then run down the branch line. Freight just really isn't that interesting on this route. Now let's talk about the other elephant in the room. This route is slow. This is the biggest turn away for me on this route and why I much prefer Boston to Providence. Of all the sections Dovetail could have done, they went with the slowest part of the entire corridor. Trains only get to average 60 miles an hour, making the route really underwhelming. Boston Sprinter, on the other hand, resolves this issue. Boston to Providence is the fastest part of the entire Northeast Corridor, allowing trains to be able to reach their maximum authorized speed. The ACS-64 is able to go 125 miles an hour, and the Acela is able to go 150 miles an hour on the section between Mansfield and Attleboro. Northeast Corridor, New York feels more like a commuter route because of its very slow speeds. When I got to go up to 125 in the ACS 64 on Boston Sprinter for the first time, I felt like I was flying. There are also speed changes literally every half a mile on this route, and I am not joking when I say that. The saddest part about Northeast Corridor, New York is that there is an achievement to go 100 miles an hour in the ACS 64, but the only place you're actually able to go 100 is near the end of the route, and it only lasts for 3 miles. Okay, come on, there has to be at least one thing I like about the route choice, right? And you know what? There is. The scenery on this route is really good. The Hellgate Bridge is definitely the main highlight of this route, and it's a lovely sight to see. There is also a lot of great scenery between Secaucus Junction and Newark. There's a lot of variety in scenery on this route, which is something I always enjoy. The route definitely has the stronger scenery over Boston to Providence. Not saying Boston Sprinter has bad scenery, but it's definitely nowhere as good as Northeast Corridor New York scenery. Boston to Providence is mostly traveling through small towns, lots of forest, and some mountainous terrain. Although the scenery can be nice between areas like Route 128 and Mansfield, the rest of the route has fairly generic scenery. I'm not blaming Dovetail Games for this, because here they definitely focus a lot more around the gameplay of the route than on Northeast Corridor New York. Boston Sprinter also has a lot, and I mean a lot, of scenery issues. But that's a discussion for another video. Northeast Corridor New York definitely has the stronger scenery. However, it sucks that the scenery is the only thing that makes this route not boring. The next major issue with this route is the lack of variety on this route.
But crazy dash, DTG could just add New Jersey Transit and the Acela to this route to add variety. You're such a stupid dumbass.
Adding the Acela in New Jersey Transit is not going to fix this god-awful route. As I mentioned before, you're only able to go 100 miles an hour at one point of the route. Remember, the Acela can go 150 miles an hour for God's sake. This route would be very boring to drive the Acela on. New Jersey Transit would also not suit this route either. They would only be running between New York Penn and Newark Liberty, which is a total of 4 stops and 12 miles. Do you guys really think that would be fun to play? I sure don't. The route Dovetail Games chose for this made adding DLCs to this route almost impossible. Now to briefly talk about the SW1000R pack, it's okay I guess. It adds some nice variety to Sunnyside Yard even though it only has 4 services. It still doesn't help the main line at all though. The only additional train, if you'd even call it one, is the X-Metroliner cab car, but these are only seen on Keystone services. This route really doesn't have any variety, which makes the route have very little replayability to it. The final major issue with this route is that the route choice makes the timetable very bland and repetitive. After researching the real-life timetable, although the 135 services for Amtrak are accurate, all these trains are just Northeast Regionals and Keystones. No other train is represented on this route. In reality, Amtrak also operates the Acela Express, Palmetto, Cardinal, Crescent, Pennsylvanian, Carolinian, Vermonter, Silver Star, and Silver Meteor on this route. Amtrak operates 76 Northeast Regionals, 26 Keystone services, and 18 other Amtrak services. The 20 other services are done by the Acela Express. However, Dovetail represented all Amtrak services with just the ACS 64 and Amfleet ones. In reality, Amtrak uses a wide variety in rolling stock, primarily on their long-distance services. These include Amfleet 2s and Viewliners. None of the long-distance rolling stock was represented on this route, hurting the overall variety of the route, and is a major immersion killer to have these pieces of rolling stock missing from the route. The base timetable doesn't even have services that go to Sunnyside Yard. You need to own the SW1000R to get just a few. Sunnyside Yard is completely dead and lifeless on this route. Going back to the route choice, this makes every Amtrak service feel the same. This really hurts the replayability of this route as there is no variety in services for these trains to do.
But crazy dash, DTG could just give the route a new timetable. Stop being a f***ing hypocrite.
There is very little Dovetail Games can do to the timetable to make it any more interesting. All you're really able to do to add more services to this route is more depot services to and from Sunnyside Yard, and add more services for the SW1000R. Other than that, there is no reason to update the base timetable as there's very little Dovetail Games is able to do to make it any better. The overall route choice completely limits the service patterns on this route. All Amtrak trains that run south of New York have unique service patterns. Between New York and Philadelphia, each Amtrak service is different. Even Northeast Regional and Keystone services have varied service patterns. This route completely prevents that since all trains stop at New York Penn and Newark Penn. Some services have to end at Newark Penn because they don't even stop at Newark Airport, making some services even shorter. Keystone services in some Northeast regionals only travel between New York and Newark, with some stopping at Newark Airport, since not all Northeast regionals go north of New York Penn. Penn Station is also the endpoint for Keystone trains. This means that you're just driving extremely short and pointless services. This makes the Keystone Cap Car DLC almost pointless and just not worth it. Okay, I'm gonna stop bitching about this route. NEC New York easily has one of the worst timetables in trains in the world. But hey, it's better to make mistakes like this sooner than later. Overall, this is one of the worst routes in train sim world. The route choice completely limited the possibility for trains that could run on this route, badly hurting the variety in services along with the variety of trains you would see on this route. The slow speeds also puts a terrible representation upon the Northeast Corridor, since trains are able to travel at much higher speeds on many other parts of the corridor. It was clear that Dovetail made this just to focus on scenery and not the actual gameplay of the route. Dovetail knew very well that this was not a good representation of the Northeast Corridor, so we were given Boston to Providence. This route is everything that Northeast Corridor New York is not. A complete timetable, a good variety in trains, the possibility for expanding that variety, and just the fact that you're able to go fast on this route. Now, does this mean that I would never want to see Dovetail Games do a section of the Northeast Corridor within the New York area again? Of course not. Well, as long as it doesn't go to New Haven. I would love to see Dovetail take on New York to Philadelphia. The possibilities for this route would be endless and would make for an amazing addition to Train Sim World 2. I will make a route suggestion on this route relatively soon, so keep an eye out for that.
But crazy dash, that means we will have no Hellgate Bridge or CSX on the route.